this week's comic reviews. And there's a bit more this time because I had a lot more time on my hands to kill. Cable. Sometimes I just can't do a really good intro. I get I think the last one was like, here's the comics. It was complete comic haul for November 2025. I got a really good intro, and that was all I needed to say, and I got right into it. And this one, I just failed. What I was trying to say was a lot more time in my hands. I should just continue after that. Cable and Deadpool Volume 2. Like with a lot of these series that are like the next volume in the series, my opinion about the series as a whole doesn't really change, so neither does the Volume 2 of a series. And as it stands, I do like the series, but one gripe I've always had is that it's a bit too convoluted for its own good. I feel like it just kind of gets into that realm of comics where it's, and I know X-Men is a lot like this in general, but just kind of confusing and kind of just confusing in general. But nothing that was at all a deal breaker for me, so to speak. And I still enjoyed the series, but I do also, on the flip side, don't mind taking breaks in between. By breaks, I mean like I could go tomorrow, get Volume 3, read it right after this, or have gotten 12 issues, 6 volumes for one volume, 6 issues for one volume, so I grab 2 and it's 12. And then every 12 days, I return it and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like how I'm doing with Black Science. I could do that, but it's series like this that I'm glad I don't do that with. Now, it's not awful. It's just kind of like it's nice to have a little break in between all the convoluted Cable and Deadpool storylines. I think the first one did a little bit better than this one did, and also it's been so long that I really would have been nice if they had a previously on. Now, do they do that? They did. All I had to do was read this. Should have done that. Because it had been, I didn't really notice how long it had been, how truly long it had been. I don't know why it had been so long, since I had read Volume 1 of Cable and Deadpool. I guess I just kept forgetting to put it on the list. Sometimes I just will completely neglect putting a Volume 2 on the list, and then I'll forget it. Immortal X-Men Volume 1. What an absolute snooze fest this was. Issue 2 was the only one that I liked, and even then I can't remember a whole lot of what happened, and even in issue 2, even in the 6th issue, it's this convoluted mess, way more so than Cable and Deadpool. At least Cable and Deadpool was interesting. This was just a bore. An absolute bore and a chore to read, and that should not be something I say about a Kieran Gillen comic. His Eternals run was the same, and I guess he just, with X-Men and Eternals, because they have a crossover, I guess he wanted to make them as equally boring as possible. And it was not super boring. There are snippets of interest here. It's just the way that the writing is so dry, and the way the characters talk is so dry, and there's a lot of just talking around the table, and it's just in general, I don't think, unless it's Wolverine by Benjamin Percy, I don't think I'm a huge X-Men Krakoan era fan, which is great because that's gonna save me a lot of time. Because there's a lot of Krakoan era comics. There's someone who had said that we got more Krakoan era X-Men comics content than we ever did for Chris Claremont's full run on X-Men, and that's like the spin-offs, this 2000 series, like just in general, how many X-Men comics Chris Claremont has written pales in comparison to how much Krakoan era X-Men we got, which is crazy to think about. That was just like, what, 5 years? So Cable and Deadpool gets an 8 out of 10, and this gets a 3 out of 10. Flash Volume 5, History Lessons. Now, this is a rare exception to my I feel the same about every volume, so I'm just going to say the same thing, every volume, yada yada, rule. Because this one, I actually think this is the strongest volume so far. This is solely written by Brian Buccellato, and I think that the gripes that I had with the writing in the first 4 volumes, it was more my most recent read-through of the series. I just thought it was a little bit clunkier than I remember it being. Nothing like, I still think this is my favorite runs of a character of all time, right behind Wonder Woman by Brian Azzarello. Like, those two are like the ground kings, are the king and queen of superhero runs, in my opinion. But I also have more problems with the Flash run than I do with the Wonder Woman run. And this volume, like, this gave me everything that I would want out of a Flash book, but also giving me something that is a bit different. Like, you don't really get something like this in Flash runs. Now, it's not completely different. It's not going to scare away longtime Flash fans or anything like that. It's not wholly different. But it does, the storyline, it was, like, very interesting. I think it was a refreshing new storyline for the Flash lineage. 8.5 out of 10. Again, it's nothing that... It's just the way that they... It probably has been... I don't know if it has been... I haven't read enough Flash, so I can't say if it's been done before or not. So let's continue, instead of me going back and reiterating something that already is pretty obvious. Or, no, it's not pretty obvious. Already saying something that I'm just saying again, in a different way. What If Venom by Jeremy Holt. Why did I mention the author's name? I don't know why I did that. Because actually, no, I've been doing that. Because I did Cable Death. Yeah, I've been doing that. Okay, perfect. I guess my brain was trying to work for me, but then worked against me at the last minute. What If Venom? So this is Jeremy Holt, and Jeremy Holt also did the other series I've read by him. Actually, there's two. Was Skip to the End and Made in Korea. Made in Korea being his magnum opus. This is his second best. This is a fun what if storyline that maybe gets a bit too Doctor Strange-ish at the end, and I thought that it was maybe a bit too rushed at the end, but nothing that was at all like made the experience at all worse. It was just one of those things I noticed that this time around I was like, yeah, I kind of felt like they should have gotten maybe an issue 6. I would not have minded that because this is a damn good Venom. It's a damn good what if addition to the what if universe. And I like that they're doing this now, where they're not doing a one-shot, it's a 5-issue miniseries. I think it should have been 6 issues. Because I think wasn't... So yeah, Spider's Shadow was supposed to be 4, but they lengthened it to 5 issues because there was more story that needed to be told. And that, I thought, was a great decision. I feel like they should have done the same for this one. But still an 8 out of 10, still a recommend, regardless. I'm going to do a very quick review for Redlands Volume 1 and 2 by Jordi Belair, because these are image books. I like to do all the image books as our separate review, but these are library books, so I still want to, review them before I get them, because it's library books in general, so I still like to do that with the image books. I did it with Paper Girls, too. So I'll always do that with the image books, regardless of whether or not I'm going to do it at the end or not, which I obviously am. But this series will be the next groundbreaking A24 movie in the... Come on, I had to perfectly describe it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the perfect recipe for the next Ari Aster A24 masterpiece. And all he needs to do is just adapt this faithfully. Because this really did remind me of something that he would come from him. Like, it's like bits and pieces. When I was reading this, I kind of did feel like it was an A24 movie. And I was kind of thinking, like, well, what A24 movie? And I was like, well, it's something like Ari Aster or something like that. Someone similar. It doesn't have to be Ari Aster, but after watching Hereditary, there's some instances where, like, yeah, that could be maybe a sprinkle of the director of Weapons here and there, too. But very good. Very, very good stuff. You'll get a full review later on in the week. I don't know when. I don't know if I'll upload it or film it on Thursday and then upload on Thursday. Because I got a lot of... Not that much more reading to do. Just because one of them is a longer book. You'll see what I'm talking about when I go over my book I'll be reading for the month video. Butcher's Boy, really good stuff. This time around I thought it was a bit more convoluted. I feel like I understood less, but not. I just gotta I gotta stop using the word convoluted. Bit like all over the place. I noticed this was more so this time around, but I still really like this, and it's my kind of book too. At the end of the day, 8.5 out of 10. And then Redlands, 9 out of 10. But again, I can do it again. You can give a full review. Kanto Volume 2 continues this really great, underrated series. This is basically those, I don't want to say 80s, but it's a good way to start to explain, so it's kind of like to start getting that image formed in your head. It's kind of like that those '80s movies, fantasy movies, brought into comic book form, where it wasn't kind of Secret of Nim, kind of adventure feel to it, but like the old timey classic advent, not old timey, that classic adventure feel to it, and that is the best thing that's going for this book, and it has a really great story, pretty interesting, very interesting characters, and just like great story overall. But I think this should be read, and this is one that I think is okay for kids. I don't know if it's not specifically made for kids, but I think that kids can just read just fine. There's no language in here. The violence is very sparse. It's more about the adventure than the conflict, conflict as in action. It's more about the adventure than anything else. But classic story, like kind of a Wizard of Oz kind of thing. It's just elements of Wizard of Oz. I haven't seen Wizard of Oz, so I only noticed this until after, but Volume 1 is called If I Only Had a Heart. Those of you who watched Wizard of Oz or just know Wizard of Oz will know what I'm talking about. 9 out of 10. 9.5. Whatever I gave Volume 1. I don't think it was anything below a 9. Human Target Volume 2 improves on Volume 1, but not to the point where I would say should be read if you don't like Tom King. If you don't like Tom King, this will not win you over. But I did like this more than Strange Adventures, and about as much as Rorschach. 7 out of 10. One thing I will say, there's no real character assassination here. There are a couple things certain characters do in this comic, but it explains in the last issue, because I was starting to be like, what the hell? What are we doing here? Again? Really? Again? And then the last issue comes out and it's explained, the characters' reasoning and purpose is explained, and it makes a lot more sense, and I was less pissed off and more understandable. I was more understanding of why the characters did what they did. Still one of those things that I think, I can understand why someone wouldn't like the series after that. I would give it a lower score because of that one instance in there. Because it is a pretty big thing that happens, and it's pretty significant, and it does happen with the classic character too. But all in all, I give this a 7 out of 10. Wolverine, Enemy of the State. When I was going over Superior in my complete November haul, I did mention how I wasn't too impressed with Wolverine, Enemy of the State, and I really wasn't. It's the pacing. Like I read this, and I remember how I was reading Old Man Logan, where it was nothing, like no instance whatsoever was I ever bored with that. I was always on the edge of my seat, even though I've read before and I know how it ended. It was just really damn good stuff. It was one of those books that you come back to after having not read it for a while, so you forget a lot of what happened in it, and it's just like almost like reading it for the first time, but also it's like, you remember enough from it, so it's obviously like, oh yeah, I remember that. But it's always like, oh my god, I completely forgot about that. That's right, too, that happens. Like, one of those instances, there's the best experience reading Old Man Logan. And even taking aside that, like, that whole, like, oh, I read before, so I hadn't read this before, so that's kind of unfair compared to, I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to say is that overall, the pacing in Old Man Logan, whether or not it was the first or 70th time, was way better than it was here. And it wasn't that later in the game in this when it was here. Here it's just the storyline should have no excuse to be this the way they did this. It's kind of overly complicated, not convoluted, just complicated. A lot is thrown in here, and I just kind of felt like there's a whole character in here you could take out, and I feel like nothing would change. Of course, change the story change the storyline to make it so he doesn't have to appear in the book. But why do we need Gorgon in here? It was just, like, I forget what he does at the end, honestly, for the most part. But it's just one of those books that was kind of overly complicated, and honestly, I have no real inclination to read this again, to give it a second chance, for now at least, and it goes into the Ultimate X-Men level pile of Mark Millar, and not the kick-ass Ultimate Superior pile of Mark Millar comics. It's very mid, as the kids would say. 6 out of 10. Yeah, 5 out of 10. a 6 out of 10 implied I actually enjoyed myself. And that, as I say, is that nice little stack of comics to return to the library tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm going back to work tomorrow. That's why I had much on my hand. It was vacation. Nice little vacation for Thanksgiving. I can go back, which is fine, I guess. Anyways, that, as I say, is that. 15 minutes. Nice.